When she was about 12, Pandora was looking for her mother's car when she got out of school. She knew her mother's car was red, but not the type. Pandora assumed that the red car in front of her was her mother's car, so she opened up the door and she climbed inside. There was a baby boy and a very confused-looking woman in the car. She immediately apologized and she got out. And as she got out of the car, she noticed her mom's car was behind the lady's car. And it turned out that somebody else had mistaken her mom's car for their car. It was even more awkward when Pandora and the other person had to slowly walk past one another. They became friends after the experience though, and Pandora brushed up on her car types when she got home.
Back when Mimi was in college, she was asked out by her crush. Since the date was that night, and she didn't have anything clean to wear, Mimi snuck into her roommate's room and borrowed a fistful of quarters so she could do laundry. She left the amount she had stolen in dollar bills on her roommate's dresser. Later that night, Mimi arrived home where she saw her roommate sitting in the dark, pissed off. She called Mimi a thief and a bitch, even though Mimi tried to explain that she left money in her room to replace the quarters she had taken. But her roommate insisted that the money had already been there, and that Mimi had straight up stolen from her. For the next week, she blackmailed Mimi by threatening to report her to the school if she didn't do what she said. At first, she humored her roommate by doing everything she told her to do, such as watch game shows with her, peel fruit and put it in a bowl, and compliment her clothing choices every morning. But after a couple of weeks, the orders got weirder. The weirdest one was when her roommate told her to hold her hand and stroke her hair while she talked to her mom on the phone. Then, she told Mimi that she had to hold her hand and walk with her around campus, telling everyone that they were a power couple. That was when Mimi decided to get the hell out of there. She told the resident advisor what was going on before blocking her roommate's number and moving into her friend's cramped off-campus apartment. After that, whenever Mimi saw her former roommate, she always ran in the opposite direction.
When he was younger, Slaptham went to a bookstore to buy a new book for school. As he was walking home, he tripped and twisted his ankle really badly. He wanted to call his parents or a friend so they could pick him up, but he'd forgotten to bring his phone. As he sat there in pain, a man came over and asked him if he needed help, and Slaptham said yes with tears in his eyes. But instead of helping him up, the man threw some money at him and walked away. Thanks for nothing, guy.
When Hellbent was in first grade, he went to the cinema with his class on a field trip. During the movie, he drank 2 liters of cola, so when they were on their way back to school, he really needed to pee. Unfortunately, he ended up peeing his pants just before he made it to the bathroom. As he went into the bathroom to change his pee-covered pants, his friends walked in to use the toilet as well, only to see an entire view of Hellbent's naked ass. For some reason, Hellbent forgot to close the bathroom stall. They still laugh about it to this day.
On the first day of middle school, Robo saw a group of 3 girls and 1 boy from the next grade up. The girls were surrounding the boy's front side, talking in whispers and not looking too suspicious. Robo could see the boy fully since she wasn't standing off to the side of him, and she overheard what they were talking about. That's when the boy pulled down the front side of his pants and the girls peered inside with smiles on their faces. They jumped back. Looking excited, one of the girls, Doopy, said,
"Damn, that bitch is hard."
And Robo slowly walked away. The next day, Robo told her friend what had happened, then went to the office to tell them. Later on in the school year, the same kids, along with a few more people, threw water bottles at Robo and her friends. She never mentioned what she saw because then it would start rumors, and everyone would bully her and call her a snitch, saying it was her fault.
Dolan School had a weird rule to where students couldn't laugh for more than 30 seconds, and he was the reason the rule was implemented. One day, Dolan got a case of the giggles and couldn't stop laughing. He laughed for 45 minutes straight. It got so bad he became lightheaded and couldn't walk. He was sent to the principal's office where he eventually stopped laughing. The principal threatened to call his mom and send him home early. After that, all of the teachers were informed about what happened. They were instructed to silence their students if any laughter went on for more than 30 seconds. Of course, when it comes to the rule, all the teachers are stricter with Dolan.
When I was in school, I told everyone that I was a witch and I was actually from a far-off land called Demaria. One of my friends actually joined with me and she thought I was her long-lost sister because she had distant memories of this place. People believed me because I was actually very on point with coincidences. I mean, these coincidences were so spot on that people just had to believe me. They believed it for a very long time, and now I just look back and I cringe at myself because I was a fucking idiot. And honestly, I don't think I was lying to myself. I honestly think I believed myself. Which is the worst part. When Pringle was 15, he went to a Walmart with his family. He wanted to know how much an item cost, so he found a grocery clerk and asked her. The woman looked at Pringle, completely confused about what he was saying, so she started telling him all about her pet cats and her children. He nodded politely while she described her tabby cat, Mr. Fruffles, and her youngest son Jimothy's new bike, but she never even answered the question about how much the item cost. He walked away, put the item down, and pretended it never happened. Honestly, that's the first thing I do when I'm confused about what someone said. I just talk about my cats, so I can relate.
About a year ago, Civil Spider and his mom went on a train ride. It was going fine until they got to a station where a drunk man came aboard. Just then, he started pole dancing with a bottle of beer in one hand while the other hung onto the pole. He continued to pole dance for about 10 minutes until he suddenly stopped. Then, the man pissed all over the floor, the smell of urine filling the carriage. Eventually, the man got off but swore loudly to everyone in the carriage. When Civil Spider and his mom got off, which was about an hour later, all they could smell was smoke, beer, and urine.
Dolan was in kindergarten. He went to the bathroom to enjoy a nice morning crap. While he was in there, another kid came in, saw Dolan's feet under the door, and decided to enact his evil plan. He crouched down, aimed his penis under the stall, and peed all over Dolan's shoes. Oh god, Dolan stank like piss for the rest of the day.
When Dolan and his sister Ramona were 10, they would hang out in the basement to watch movies or do whatever they felt like doing. Their dad's office was also in the basement, and he could easily hear and see anything that they did. One day, being bored and wanting attention, Dolan pulled a pillow over his face and pretended not to be able to breathe. Ramona didn't even notice, although their dad yelled from his office, "Get that pillow off your brother's face right now, young lady!" somehow thinking she was smothering him. Dolan took the pillow off his face to see what was happening, but instead saw the death stare his dad was giving him. In a deadly tone, his dad said, "Don't ever do that again! Ever!" Dolan still cringes whenever he thinks about it.
When Gooby was younger, she was at a cafe with her family, and her mother was using her phone when she suddenly looked in Gooby's direction and said, "Oh wow." She then turned her camera on and started taking pictures. Gooby smiled and then posed, feeling incredibly flattered. Her mum then lowered her phone and asked Gooby to move to the left. Gooby looked behind her and realized that her mum was taking photos of the cake on the table behind her. Her siblings laughed and they still bring it up to this day.
Well, back when I was single and out of the dating scene, I was a pretty bold person. I'd approach women quickly, get their phone numbers, get all sweet and nice, you know the drill. I met a pretty fun woman and we had some nice times together, a few good dates, a little bit of flirtation here and there, everything was looking great. Then one night at about 4 a.m. she sent me a text message. It was a little bit early in the morning, but hey, it was titty. She sent me a titty picture. And you know, as they say, you never leave a lady waiting. So I got the camera out, took a picture of my dick and sent it to her as quickly as I could. Problem is, the damn photo wouldn't send. I tried again, rejected. It just didn't work. So I gave up for the night. I figured that's just how it goes. Must have been an outage or something. I'll get back to her real soon. I woke up later in the morning and the first thing I did was make sure that she could see my penis pictorial. And hey, lucky me, it seems like some of the pictures went through overnight. But my excitement soon waned as I found out I was a little bit hasty in sending out those photos, and the ones that did go through went to my father. Neither him or I have ever made mention of these photos, but I know they went through. I know they did, and I know he saw them. The only shred of dignity I've retained from that is that I did bring that girl home later, so I can only hope he put two and two together. Oh, please let that be the case. So the lesson here is pretty common sense, but make triple sure you know who those pictures are going to.
Back when he worked at a store, Derek saw his fair share of idiot customers. One day, he came across a customer that topped them all. While he was cleaning up his department, he noticed an agitated customer approaching him. The customer began to complain to him about there being no expiration dates on paper towels. At the same time, Derek had no idea how to react to the idiotic complaint, so he just pointed the customer to the service desk. Now, whenever he looks back at it, Derek can't help but laugh.
One day, Gergak decided to text his girlfriend to see how she was going. He remembered she was having lunch with her mum that weekend, so he thought it'd be nice to say hi to your mum for me. But Gergak had a brain malfunction and accidentally sent the message to one of his friends by mistake. This wouldn't normally be a big deal, except his friend's mum had just died 2 days earlier. His friend really didn't enjoy the painful reminder of the situation. Gergak now double checks all his messages before hitting send.
In high school, James Shark decided to stay at a friend's house. After being at his friend's house for about 45 minutes, James Shark's roommate called him to ask how to open a pickle jar. When he told him how to open it, his roommate said, "Okay," and hung up. About half an hour later, James Shark got another call from his roommate who said cops were at the house. Of course, James Shark grabbed his shit and left. When he got home, the fire department, cops, and an ambulance were parked outside. It turned out that his roommate called 911, saying that someone had a heart attack. As soon as the police arrived, he asked them to open the pickle jar.
One time, when he was in 6th grade, Derek overheard an argument while riding the bus. At first, he didn't bother paying attention. Then there was yelling, and that made him turn around in his seat. He saw 2 older boys having a fistfight while yelling, "No, there isn't!" As soon as one of them pulled out a knife, the bus driver separated them. When Derek asked what had happened, someone told him that the boys were fighting over how many letters there are in the alphabet. One of them, a 7th grader, insisted that there were 21. The other boy, an 8th grader, said that there were 26. Derek couldn't believe it.
Pandora secretly likes making people think that she's a guy. She does this by wearing a disguise. First, she will put on 2 sports bras and some really baggy clothes. Then she hides her hair in a hat and will put on this really deep masculine voice. It fools people every time. She has no idea why she does this. It just makes her happy. None of her friends know, so let's keep it between us. Okay? One time Pringle was catching the train home from work when his phone ran out of battery. To pass the time, he decided to listen to other people's conversations. The woman in front of him was talking on the phone and Pringle couldn't believe what he was hearing. It sounded like the woman was yelling at her son because she had found his gross curly pubic hair in their family jar of peanut butter. She said it ruined her peanut butter and jelly sandwich and kept getting louder until eventually she was announcing to the whole carriage that her son liked to stick his dick into jars of peanut butter. Pringle was in hysterics, but it also turned him off of peanut butter for quite a while.
One day, a teenage slapped ham took his dog for a walk around the neighborhood. They were on their way home when the dog decided to take a shit on the neighbor's lawn. Slapped Ham was annoyed, but being the responsible dog owner he was, he bent down to pick it up. While he was down there, Slapped Ham had a complete brain malfunction and started sniffing his dog's poop. Of course, his neighbors picked this exact moment to come out of their house. They looked at Slapped Ham with disgust and shouted,
"Hey kid, are you retarded?"
Slapped Ham was so embarrassed. He hasn't been able to live this down and now walks his dog over on the other side of the street. Back when Gergak was 3 years old, small balls of snot would appear on the walls around his house, and he and his older brother blamed it on an entity known as the Boogie Phantom, even though Gergak knew it was his brother. Eventually, his parents got sick of it and asked who did it. His brother blamed it on Gergak, of course. Even though he knew it was him, he suffered in silence as more snot appeared on the wall, and Gergak was blamed every time. Until finally, his family caught him green-handed, and the mystery of the Boogie Phantom concluded.
When Gergak was 4, he got dragged to a hardware store with his dad and 12-year-old brother. Gergak was bored out of his mind, so his brother lifted him up onto his shoulders, raised his hands, and told Gergak to grab onto his thumbs. For the next hour and a half, Gergak pretended his brother was a huge badass robot and he was the pilot. Together they stomped around the store, blowing up other customers with their missiles. One man even played along and started shooting back. They had a huge imaginary firefight and destroyed the aisle with their imaginary explosions. Gergak will always remember how his brother turned a boring trip to the hardware store into one of his most treasured memories.
Pringle met a girl online who turned out to live close by, and they became good friends. They spent hours sending messages to each other saying cute and naughty things. Then one day, they talked about meeting up. They set a time, day, and location. They even messaged reminders on the day of the meeting. Pringle's older brother drove him to the meetup point about an hour away because his parents didn't want him to go out there all alone. They got there on time and they hung around for half an hour, but she didn't show up. When they got back, Pringle called her up and asked what the hell was her deal. The girl said that she just forgot. When Pringle called her out on her bullshit, she said that she'd just been lying to him throughout the whole relationship and that he should be thankful she played up the nice act for the past few months. After that, Pringle hung up and never talked to her again. A few years ago, Mikhailum was working at a store that sold cameras. One day, a woman came in yelling that she wanted a refund for a camera because all of the pictures it took were completely black. He asked her to show him how she took the pictures when he noticed that she left the lens cap on. He showed her this and took a picture showing that the camera indeed worked fine. Instead of thanking him or taking her new photography skills home, she aggressively accused Mikhailum of using witchcraft. He told her that he was unable to give her a refund on the condition of witchcraft, and she left the store yelling to herself.
The dumbest thing Civil Spider believed when he was little was during the 1st and 2nd grade. This was the stage when girls were like aliens or some sort of foreign species, so having a girlfriend at that age was like being a king. But he had this weird idea of what a girlfriend actually was. Civil Spider thought that every girl he talked to was his girlfriend, so after speaking with a girl, he'd go up to all his buddies and say things like,
"Yeah, she's my girlfriend."
This went on until he told his cousin all about all of his girlfriends, and his cousin then proceeded to explain what that word actually meant.
I got my first full-time job straight out of high school, didn't even have a summer break. I was installing audio-visual gear like PA systems and projectors, and I'd gotten to 3 months into the job, which is the end of the probationary period. Now it was a decent drive from my house to work, about an hour with no traffic, and at peak hour that becomes a lot longer. On the last day of probation, I managed to sleep in until about the time I was supposed to start work. I called and apologized to my boss that I was going to be late, and I headed into work as quickly as I could. When I got there, the people who were still standing around the warehouse were having a laugh at how I had celebrated my 3-month anniversary with being 3 hours late for work. And that's how I lost my first job.
Once, I was invited to this rager, right? There had to have been at least 1,500 people there. There was a DJ, a pool, beer pong, people were snorting Coca-Cola off each other's stomachs. It was a blast, until a bright light shined from above. You could barely see it because it was so bright, but I'm sure I saw a disc-shaped object. Then I woke up on a beach all by myself. I don't know what happened, but since then I haven't been able to go near magnetic things without getting a migraine. And sometimes, people tell me I cluck like a chicken without realizing it. Okay? I'm sorry, I've never been to a party. When Pandora was 11, she dated a guy who had really strict parents. They managed to date for a couple of months, but then his parents found out. He started asking weird questions like, "Would you cry if you broke up with me?" That night, Pandora checked her phone and she had a message from her friend. It said, "Your boyfriend says he doesn't want to go out with you anymore because his parents found out and he doesn't want to date you anymore." Pandora got secondhand dumped by text by her friend on behalf of her actual boyfriend.
When Nixium was 6, his older brother found a toad in the backyard. Nixium was deathly afraid of toads and didn't even want to see one. His brother said he would give him $30 if he would lick the toad. Nixium desperately wanted the money to buy a new video game, so he agreed. He ended up getting so sick from the toad that he had to stay in bed for a week. One upside though is that his brother got grounded for a month and a half and had to pay him double what he originally had to. Princess Proton was on a train one afternoon when a large group of guys boarded it. Once the train started moving again, they walked as if they were looking for something. One guy stood in front of Princess Proton and stared at her for no reason. She tried not to make eye contact, but then he stood closer to her. Just then the train slowly stopped, and out of nowhere, the group pulled out dull knives and other weapons and started attacking everybody. The guy standing in front of Princess Proton tried to stab her, but she managed to dodge the knife and threw a punch at him. She ran out of her seat, trying to escape the chaos until a man threw her out of the carriage. The next day, on the news was a story about a train massacre where 5 people died, and a group of guys fled the scene without a trace.
Dumbest thing my brother used to believe was that if he stood perfectly still for a long time, he would become a mannequin. He probably started believing this when he was walking through a department store one day with our mum, and he noticed 2 women standing next to a clothed mannequin. One of the women seemed to be holding perfectly still. He thought that she was actually trying to become a mannequin. From that day onwards, for the next several years, he made sure not to stand still unless he absolutely had to.
Well, we were never actually dating, but after a one-night stand, my phone was ringing off the hook. After about 50 calls, she got the idea that I was ignoring her, so she called me on a different phone. I answered it and she told me that she had AIDS. And I gotta admit, she got me good. I was in a panic. I was thinking, oh my god, I got AIDS! What am I gonna do? But after a point, I calmed down, collected myself, went to a clinic to get checked. Turns out I was totally fine. So what did I do about her? Well, I called her back and said, hey, it's okay, I have AIDS too. She went through the same process that I did, and after finding out that she didn't have AIDS either, we both kind of came to the conclusion that that was a very stupid game that we played. I still think I got the worst of this though, because when I went to the clinic, I got the whole job. Even that thing where they stick in the Q-tip and twirl it around, and let me tell you, that hurts! It's not nice!
One time, Civil Spider and his friends decided it would be really funny to buy cases of poppers and have drinks in the woods in the middle of winter. When they arrived, they found a Native American event set up in the wood with props like giant teepees and animal pelts. They decided to go into a teepee, wrap themselves in animal pelts, and get drunk. At one point, Civil Spider peed in the fire pit inside the teepee. He then ran into the woods completely drunk to search for a hunting spear. He ended up running away and getting lost. His friends found him at the entrance to the subway, covered in his own vomit. He had cuts all over him from the trees and bushes he ran through, and he was still wearing the animal pelts when he took the train home.
There were times when Pandora's sister wouldn't be very nice to her. Sometimes they would fight, then get along for a little bit before going back to fighting. One time, their parents left them home alone. Pandora asked her sister, "You want to play ball?" Her sister kept refusing, despite Pandora's constant begging. Finally, her sister agreed to play. Everything was going well until Pandora accidentally threw the ball at an expensive lamp and broke it. She freaked out, but her sister told her to stop freaking out and to just hide it. So Pandora tried to clean up the mess, but was too late. Their parents came home. But her sister ended up taking the blame. After that, she thought her sister was the coolest.
Back in school, Doopy needed to excuse herself from class as she was having girl issues. However, this teacher wouldn't let kids be excused without a reason. Her desk was in front of the class, just in front of the blackboard. There were a few boys in the class, so Doopy hoped the teacher would get it without her explaining it. Doopy went up to the teacher and said she had a girl issue to deal with. However, the teacher wouldn't let her go without an explanation. Suddenly, somebody behind them said, "Ugh, what is that smell?" Doopy then yelled out,
"I gotta change my pad!"
The boys began to laugh, and she was allowed to go to the bathroom, but she felt horribly embarrassed thanks to the teacher.
When Kyle was in high school, he got into a fight with a bully who was always picking on him. When his dad found out about this, he took literally everything out of Kyle's room as punishment, even his bed. Kyle had to suffer sleeping on the cold, hard floor for 2 weeks, all because he dared to stand up for himself.